Well, hello everyone, and welcome to our live hang number 6. This is your buddy Dave over at MarsX3D. And here we are for another week, daylight savings time. We're all kind of adjusting to that, aren't we? I know it always takes me a couple of days. I like regular time. I don't like the daylight time. But hey, that and a dime and a couple more complaints will get you nowhere. So it is what it is. Anyway, we have some interesting things to share with you tonight. You know, as I mentioned last week, on the live hangs, I will be sharing the stereo views that will be included in this upcoming week's episode. This one will be episode number 88, coming up on Friday at midnight. And I know some of you like to wait up late for that. Others get it in different parts of the world. They get it in the morning or they get it in the wee hours, whatever your thing is. Martin's in. Hello, Martin. Thanks for stopping by. It's always good to have you here. And yeah, I've decided that showing everybody, at least on the live hang, previews of the things that I've found this week can't hurt anything. Maybe it'll take away a little bit from the episode for those of you who do see it. But also, when we put the episode together, there's music and there's analysis and there are lots of other little things that go along. Here's Salvatore showed up. How are you, sir? From New Jersey, Salvatore. And inhabit Mars. All right. You made it on time tonight. And I am doing great, inhabit Mars. And the chat appears to be up and functional. And I apparently am up and functional after a fashion. Some of you will remember over the last several weeks I've worn a stocking cap. There's Alfie Joe. Hey, greetings to you, my friend, from Texas. I love Texas. And so anyway, the hat came off this week. My head is healed enough from the scarring and the procedure that they did to get rid of all those melanomas on my head. And so it's kind of a relief. And because I love looking at myself. I am so beautiful. I really can hardly get over it. So, Salvatore, awesomeness, Dave. Hey, takes one to know one, doesn't it? You guys are all awesome. Do you know what a rare breed you guys are? I mean, there are not many people who've taken the time to learn X3D, and you guys can do it. So, since you guys are the first ones through the door, you're not late. You don't have to pay a quarter into the coffee can by the door. So I'm going to share something with you. Hey, yeah, I am looking better, Martin. I can stand to look myself in the mirror again. Well, it was never that easy a task. But have you got your X3D chops ready to roll? Because here's a picture that I took outside in my driveway yesterday, actually. And you should be able to see that in X3D, I hope. The first crocuses of the season. Boy, am I always glad to see those. And I know winter is on the way out when those crocuses show up. I might show those later when more people come around. And I took this one with my cell phone. It's called a cha-cha, when you take a left image and a right image and then you process it. And you don't always get the composition just the way it's supposed to be. I could have done that better. But the sun was so bright, it's really hard to see the screen. So anyway, that's my little Little treat for you early birds who have slipped in here under the wire. And Lane is here. Good to see you. Unless I can't remember, brother. Is that Iane? Yane? Or is it Lane? I guess if it was a capital L, it would have a little foot on it, wouldn't it? So Iane. Oh boy, I hope I'm saying that right. Anyway, yeah, so that reminds me of a young lady from Dublin. Almost sounds like a lyric. I once knew a lady from Dublin. And Renee Van Oosterhout. Very good to see you. Good to see everybody. And Renee, I always appreciate it when you show up. I was working with a young lady in Dublin the other day who has her hypnosis practice up and running. And I learned a lot from her. And I always love hearing that beautiful Irish brogue. You know, I know that people in Ireland think that we're the ones with the accent. But to my ears, that Irish brogue is fabulous. And it's Ian. Ian. Is it Ian or Ian? Because I had a lady that lived in back of my house in Florida. And I know I don't think you're a lady. Or if you are, well, please forgive me. But her name was Ian, like Diane without the D. And, but then I'm thinking maybe your name is Ian, right? I'll get her right one of these days, won't I? Learning all these names and being ready for this evening is always a lot of fun. You know, I do look forward to it. I didn't ever think that I would be doing a live hang or anything like it. It took me long enough to figure out how to do all the technical stuff, didn't it? But by golly, we got it working now. So we've had a busy week. Both Neville Thompson and Neil Spence have put out some beautiful Giga macros and Flickr uploads, in Neil's case, of the just really large scale pans from Perseverance. And the cameras are sharp, and I have some images. Hello, Mimi. How are you? Thank you for showing up. I'll tell you what, when you come into the room, it just lights up. But we have some really interesting images from Perseverance, Percy. And I'll be showing you those in a little bit. And for Mimi's sake, Mimi, get your X3D chops going. And here comes some crocuses that I took yesterday from my front yard. I love the purple ones. I'm a little bit of a gardener, not much, but a little bit. And I just love seeing those come up because I know spring is not far behind. Yes, indeed. Anyway, there are the crocuses, flowers for each one of you. And I'm back. Yes, and some of you new coming in the room. Two Worlds Doctor, the medical doctor. God bless you, sir. Thank you for stopping by. As you may have noticed, some of you, I mentioned a little bit earlier, my hat is off. My facial skin has recovered for the most part from the melanoma treatment that I had that made my forehead look like the surface of the moon. And it was pretty ghastly for about 2 weeks. But it's healed up enough to where I can kind of show my face. It's not quite done yet. There's still skin peeling off, and some of those blotches and marks are fading away. but I'm awfully glad to have you all show up. And I'll just periodically, as people join the room, I'll share the crocuses from my front yard with you. I know that some of you, hey, Planetary Protector, good to see you. Thanks for stopping by tonight. And a little X3D crocus action for everyone out there. We're going to get to about a baker's dozen, 13, really, I think, interesting stereo views of anomalies that I've run across this week. And I've had a couple that people have sent me. And I'm always glad to get them. If you run across something and you want me to have a look at it, well, just send it on over to MarsX3D@gmail.com. That's easy to remember, right? And I don't always get a chance to look at them right away. I'm busy. But I do look at them eventually, and if they lend themselves well to the 3D treatment, you can bet I'll use them. If they're good, if they're non-fractal, if they're clear. So I think there are enough people here now that I can maybe share this first anomaly with you. And this is one that was pointed out by Phil Cox. And this is the detail view of a blue cube from Curiosity 416. Oh, yeah, Martin, I know those crocuses just go nuts in the various cemeteries, and God bless you for taking care of the grass there. Well, now, Renee, I don't know which one you're referring to, the blue cube or the crocuses, but yeah, the crocuses I shot myself with my iPhone using the cha-cha method where you move it over a couple inches and shoot another one. Didn't get the composition just right. The sunshine was also awful bright, but I was so glad to see that. And yeah, Mimi, it does look like a Rubik's Cube, doesn't it? The thing is, this looks metal to me and very reflective. I knocked back those shadows so you could see it a little better. And I'd like you to notice on the top left corner a Pythagorean triangle. We have found that mark on all kinds of different anomalies all over Mars. In fact, I should put together a collection of Pythagorean right-angled triangles with exactly the same mark to show you how prevalent it is. And thank you, Renee. He says, nice picture of the crocuses. And is that a sheared off beam? Well, I suppose it could be. You know, frankly, it looks like metal. And I say that because not only the reflectivity on the top, but the fact that it has a bluish color to it, and I see that Martin agrees with me that it's very metallic looking. It seems to be reflecting that blue sky very clearly. And yeah, Martin, I think that Mars was subjected to tremendous heat during the nuclear catastrophe that stripped off the oceans and the atmosphere and the cities and the people and everything else. We find a lot of what are called vitrified rocks that have been subjected to such high heat that they get a layer of glass. The layer actually melts and turns into glass. And Inhabit Mars says that backside looks beveled. Texture is definitely different than the rocks around it. yeah, you think? It does have a pitted metallic look. I'd sure like to know what this is and why it's sitting at that odd angle in the sand. It's almost like it might be part of something, attached to something underneath. We find a lot of cubes, a lot of cubes on Mars. I'm going to turn down the background music just a little bit so I can think more clearly. I am easily confused nowadays, but you already knew that, didn't you? But we do find a lot of cubes all over Mars. And I have to agree with Martin. It does look as if it was cast in that shape. Now, here's another one from a GMAC by Neville Thompson of Curiosity 3040. And Two World Medical Doctor indicates that blue is a common color on Mars. Yes, it is. We see a lot of definitely blue rocks that are not just reflecting sky color, but seem to be blue in and of themselves, almost like some form of turquoise. And I can't help wondering if perhaps someday ornaments and jewelry made of that blue rock on Mars is going to be very valuable. Of course, what we need to do is go to Jupiter and put a bucket out because it rains diamonds over on Jupiter. Boy, that would crash the market. Okay, take a look at this. I don't know, you'll notice that the ironic title that I put to this is carved by ? So what do you think? Is this carved by hand, or is it carved by erosion? Has really interesting patterns. They almost border on being coherent, don't you think? And Salvatore is exactly right. You know, when we actually get public archaeologists to Mars and we begin removing that sand overburden that's so prevalent, that's buried the entire planet, we're going to find ruins that'll just make our hair stand on end. I have a feeling it's a very, very rich archaeological field, the entire planet. So what do you think? Is this carved by hand? Or is that just erosion? I'm really kind of on the fence. I don't know what to make of it. And you know, sometimes I get a little peeved with people who make wild proclamations. I had one guy on my Facebook site. Thank you, Salvatore. Yeah, I think it's a cool picture of that carving. Let me put it back up there real quick for you. I think that's a cool picture. It's pretty easy to see. It's pretty plain. But the jury's still kind of out whether that's an intelligent carving Mimi says it looks like erosion to her. I wouldn't argue. The only thing, and when the video comes out, you'll have the links to go right to the Gigapan. And as you look around the Gigapan, you'll find that there aren't really any other rocks that look like this. Normally, when I find an anomaly, I look all around at the geological context to see if there's anything similar. And if there is, I have a tendency to discount it. And AC Stinnett country music. Hey! Yeah, it could be writing. It could be. We don't know for sure. We're just speculating. I did find it an interesting find. And I'll tell you what, honestly, if I was on Mars and I saw this, I'd pick it up and take it home and put it in my collection. I'd have the most amazing rock garden out back. I don't know that crocuses would grow very well on Mars, but maybe they could. I don't know. For those of you who are just getting here, I'm going to put the crocuses up again for you. Welcome. Some spring crocuses from the front yard in X3D, taken with the iPhone. And Mimi's right. It just might be, that carving just might be Martian graffiti. Anyway, I was saying a little bit earlier, there was a guy on my Facebook page tonight, the MarsX3D Facebook page, and he was making a wild claim about something my buddy Laszlo Shabalix posted. And he says, it's a flesh-frozen snake. And no, where are the teeth? Where are the eyes? Where are the nostrils? And by the way, where is the body? And it bothers me a bit when people make these wild claims, these definitive statements, and say, this is what it is, and I'm defining it for you. It's like, well, if you're going to define something, then double check to see if there are other bits of supporting evidence to help you make that definitive statement. I feel that definitive statements like that, you know, it's a flesh-frozen snake, or it's a lady pulling a wagon, or it's a vehicle. I tell you, it's a vehicle. It's just irresponsible, and people who drop in and look at it just laugh and shake their heads and go, these people are weird. They're just whacked. I mean, it's hard enough being in this kind of a fringe area to be taken seriously, and you try to, I try to raise the bar on the MarsX3D Facebook page, and truth be told, I do delete a lot of things just because they're garbage or pareidolia or unclear. But at the same time, I don't want to offend everybody. I'm an equal offense employer. Okay, here's something that came up this week. I love these ChemCam gigamacros that Nev is doing. They're so cool. They're black and white. Now, a lot of times they're blurry like this one. But look at that. Turn on your X3D chops, and there is a pipe, a flattened pipe coming out of the cliff. But what's interesting is look below the pipe. You can see that water or some liquid has flowed out of that pipe and for a long time because it's worn away the rock and made a little flow pattern there. I thought that was pretty interesting. I wish it was more clear than it is. But hey, we'll take what we can get. And one of these days, I showed a bunch of pipes last week. And yeah, Martin, it is some kind of outlet because you can see the flow pattern below the pipe. It's worn into the rock. So that sucker's been there a long time. Or it could be sandstone and very soft, and the effluviant may be loaded with grit and it just carved it in a year or two. You just don't know for sure. But yeah, we had posted a bunch of pipes in last week's episode, so I'm not going to do that in this week. But one of these days, I'm going to do a collection of pipes. And we'll see how that turns out. I've got another Neville Thompson Chem Cam Gigamacro. They're so neat. And a fellow named Van Cliff found this next one. And let me tell you, this really does look like a structure. Take a look. Put on your X3D eyes and go in there. Well, you can plainly see it's got a doorway, doesn't it? With a lintel above the door and a little kind of step in front of the door on the bottom. It's got that nice square piling down in front on the right. All kinds of carving around it and on what would be the roof. And look how that roof to that entrance is kind of marked off as a square with all that stuff on the inside. Is that carving? I don't know. And of course there are more shapes all around it. And that does make it, in my opinion, a genuine anomaly. I love stuff like that. And of course you understand that I knock back the shadows when it's in deep shadow. This is very bright sunlight. It's about noontime on Mars when this was taken. Very bright sunlight, springtime. And so I dial back the exposure and make it a little bit more visible. And we'll run through these again a little bit later on before we close out for the evening. So the people who are late coming in will have a chance to catch everything. And AC Stinnett, saying, well, I wonder how big that is. I would venture to say it's 4 to 5 feet tall. So I'm thinking that was made for people who were fairly short. I don't know that for sure, but this Friday, when the episode goes up, you can look at the context view, excuse me, and you'll be able to tell pretty clearly how big it might be. And yeah, AC Stinnett Country Music says something had to cut inside the rock. Well, it sure did. If that was made by water, the opening would be, if not roundish, would at least be kind of misshapen. And of course, that lower part, that step right at the bottom, would be worn away, wouldn't it? And you'd also see alluvial erosion on the rocks below. So, yes, you're absolutely right. That had to be cut, in my opinion. And Marty says it looks like writing below where it says detail view. That could be. You know, there's just not enough detail revealed there. But you know, when you just let your eyes play around the perimeter of the picture, there is all kinds of strange stuff in there. And yeah, it inhabit Mars. Look to the right of the opening. It looks like a rod sticking up out of that rock with a T on the top. That could be a rod. It could be the edge of the rock. We really don't know. I made it as clear as I could. And Mimi says, yeah, look at that block. Down on the lower right, there's a perfect block sticking out. But what gets me is that kind of roof line that's trapezoidal and then square on top. It could be a ventilation device. Who knows, Renee? I'm not really sure. I mean, it's all just speculation, isn't it? There are a lot of different thoughts that we can bring to these things, and really, if you ever feel like it, there is a video. I forget which number it is, 46, 44, but it's Anomaly Hunter 101, and it's a guide to not only becoming an anomaly hunter, but trying to understand some of the processes that we go through, the mental and visual ones. And you know, it's just a Rorschach's test. And I even talk about that in that video with an X3D picture of Hermann Rorschach. And everybody's familiar with that, right? The ink blots. And you see, oh, I see a naughty turtle doing something to a woman, or I see a clown with balloons, or I see whatever. And that reminds me, I haven't played Naughty Turtle in an awfully long time. But, I'll get to that maybe this weekend. But it's real easy to put our interpretations on top of things, our earth-biased interpretations. And too many people make wild claims. So anyway, there's a gentleman on my Facebook site, MarsX3D, named Alexander Leah. And he's developed some software that will go into the NASA database and pull out the matching stereo pairs and do a basic alignment on them. And, you know, I don't know why he doesn't publish a photograph or why he doesn't publish more of his images, because he turns up some really interesting stuff sometime, like this next one. Look at that, will you? Now, Alexander Leah found that in Curiosity 3052, NavCam. Hello, David Rains. Thank you for coming aboard. And we'll look at that picture again in just a minute. And he mentions how it looks like a rooftop garden. Well, yeah, it could be, unless there may be plants that are endemic to Mars that can withstand the brutally cold nights, the long winters. And to tell you the truth, I don't know precisely. I could find out on Analyst Notebook where that picture was taken. But I would think it would need to be near the equator to have an outside garden. because those nights do get terribly cold. Anyway, back to this amazing object. It's right next to the rover, and the nav cam takes nice stereo pairs. And they're grainy, and you can easily see the blocky compression artifacts that are in there. But that, my friends, looks mechanical to me. Especially over on that left side underneath those three little arms with spheres on the end coming out and bending. I don't know. It just looks like a technical device. And thank you, Greg Van Dyke. And Jerry Light, how are you, brother? Thank you for stopping by. You're a little bit late, so you need to remember to drop a quarter in the jar by the door. That's your fine. And later on, when the jar fills up, I buy Twizzlers for everyone. Or maybe if it's towards Easter, it'll be Cadbury cream eggs. Yep. Greg saw 3052. There it is. And you know, I don't care who gets the credit on it as long as nobody's pardon me, steals my intellectual property. We have so many eyes on these various anomalies that you know, there must be scores, if not hundreds, of people who find the same thing all the time. They say, I found it first. No, me. No, I did. And it's like, okay, good. You all found it. Now, let's extract it. Let's process it. Let's composite it. Let's present it and analyze it. That's where the real work is, and that's where the credit usually would go. As I say, I don't care who gets the credit as long as no one steals my intellectual property. I'll credit people all day long if I know who found it or where I stumbled across it first. And that doesn't mean that if I find someone that I think found it first, that doesn't mean they are. It just means that's the first person I found that found it. So we got another one. This one is coming up. We're going to start getting into Percy now. And here comes one that's a little bit strange. I'm going to let you look at it for a minute before I talk about it. Greg Van D says that that little device that Alexander Leah shared with us, size of a sheriff's badge. Well, I'd have to go into Analyst Notebook. Of course, it'll be 6 months before they have the metrics up on that. I suspect it's a bit larger than a sheriff's badge, actually, Greg. David Haynes. We'll go back to that structure in a bit. He says he seems to think there might be a person there with a Vietnamese type hat on. The big white box on his back. Very interesting, Two Worlds medical doctor. He says, Semper Vivum, always living, red lion can withstand 30 degrees on Earth. Well, that's pretty good. Anyway, look at this one. Now, see where it says detail view? And just go right down below it at the 5 o'clock position. It looks like a big teacup upside down. Doesn't it? But what gets me is that arrow pointing at what looks like a shark. And in the larger image, you can see it really clearly. It looks like a shark with two black eyes. Is that a statue? Is it a snake statue? Why does it have two black eyes? Why is it so symmetrical? Why are the eyes the same size? Why are they black? Is it a different colored stone? Are there holes there? We just simply don't know. So let's go back to that structure where David said that it looks like a guy standing there with a Vietnamese style rice paddy hat on. Big white box on his back. Well, you know, like Will Ferrar says, I see what I see, and you see what you see what you see. You don't see what I see. You see what you see. Ah, come on. I knew I shouldn't have been a hippie all those years ago. Look what it did to my mind. But you know, it's so easy to assign meaning to these images, isn't it? It's so easy for our minds to reach in there and try to make sense out of what is in front of us. We're desperate to assign meaning. Anyway, I think that when you see the context view, of that device, that there it is. I'm finding it. That's why I'm hesitating here. Here's that device again. And when you see the context view, which I don't have ready to show for you, it's real close to the rover. In fact, the wheel of the rover is almost hitting you in the nose when you look at it in 3D. But yeah, it is small. I think it's a little bit bigger than a sheriff's badge. I could be wrong about that, of course. And Jerry says he's seeing a skull to the right of the door. Is he? Well, let's have a look. Is that a skull? I don't know. Here's the way I look at it, literally. I take the simplest, most obvious explanation that I can rationally speculate about. Occam's razor. Many of you are familiar with that. The simplest explanation is usually the correct one. And when we look at these different things, our mind wants to kind of run wild with what it's seeing. But in the interests of catching and holding rational people's attention with actual evidence, I use Occam's razor. And I just, hey, there are a lot of things that I think they kind of remind me of different things, but I don't say it. And you wouldn't believe how many images I throw away. I throw away between 30 and 40% of the anomalies that I look at each week because they're too easily explained by local geology, by the geological context. Or there's some other factor involved with it. Unless I have something that's pretty clean and pretty hard to argue with, I won't mess with it. Renee says he thinks he can see steps leading up to the building. That may be. Kind of looks like maybe it was up in the air. Anyway, we're back to Laszlo's cup. There it is. Underneath where it says detail view, you can see what looks like a coffee cup upside down on the ground. Now, that may be just a fortuitous arrangement of rocks. It may not be anything. But now, take a look at this. I call this a Nephilim cup. This is a gigantic mug I found on the plains of Curiosity 388. Get your X3D going and look at that thing. Now, this is big enough for a full-grown man to get into. But look at the edges. First of all, the sides are perfectly straight. The top and the bottom edges are beveled at about 45 degrees. It's perfectly flat on top. And by golly, there's a beautifully formed handle on it. Isn't there? A giant mug sitting on the surface of Mars. What are we supposed to do about that? I'm not really sure. Let's go back to the hidden layer real quick, because Renee says, I think I can see steps leading up to the doorway. And thank you, Renee. Yeah, that was a cool find. Mimi says that's the big art alien head. And nothing against Joe. I like Joe and I respect what he does. And he's been a long time anomalist. He sometimes seems a bit enthusiastic to me in terms of seeing alien heads and statues and faces everywhere. I tend to take a more pragmatic approach. I'm what they call a fun stopper. That's me. Anyway, Renee was saying he thinks he could see steps leading up to the building. Those may very well be very eroded steps. I just don't know. And until we get there, we can't know for sure. Going back to our mug, it's tempting to use this as evidence for liquid. And I actually wouldn't argue very hard against that, because why else would you have a mug? Form follows function in engineering terms, doesn't it? Now, whether that means there's water, de facto evidence of it, not necessarily, except that we do know there is water on Mars. We've been telling NASA that for many, many years before they finally came out last year and said, there's water on Mars, and made a big announcement about it. And we're like, well, duh. But you know what I think? This is maybe silly. That great big mug. You ever seen those giant fiberglass figures for tire stores or restaurants out in the Southwest? And it makes me think that this might have been a great big cowboy standing there with a mug of coffee saying, y'all come in and eat. And I can't help thinking if this isn't made out of something different than stone, because how would that handle survive all those millennia on Mars without breaking. I just don't get it. Okay, and Renee wants to go back to the hidden layer, and he says the stairs start at the left. Well, maybe. Maybe. I just don't know. So, okay. Now, let's get on over to some new stuff from Percy. Take a look at this. Okay, now, first of all, I'm going to tell you a technical thing, and that is that the stereo winder. Am I from Iowa? Yeah, I guess I am. The stereo window is not set properly on this because it cuts off the stuff on the side that I want to show you. So I left it the way it was. And for most people, it doesn't affect you. But if you are a stereo enthusiast, this type of setting on the window is considered blasphemy. Very poor form. But I've marked in purple the things we're going to look at. Right there in front, a nice square block. Now, that little bit to the left of it is not part of it. That's a rock standing up in the sand in front of it. But now, go off at about 2 o'clock, and there's another little purple deal next to that long white rock. And that's an odd-looking thing. And then you go on past that to the right, and there is something just wonderful there. Those 3 items, we'll be looking at that in a minute. And then way beyond them, in the background, is another object, which I think is by far the best thing I've seen so far from Percy. And then way over on the left side, you can see another purple item. Strange little deal there. And Two Worlds Medical Doctor is asking, is there a scale to size these objects by? The quick answer is yes, but with a provision. They do include metrics on the analyst's notebook, but very often the metrics are not assigned to the mast cams. And if you're very, very lucky, you can find the same object on the nav cams or the has cams. Takes a lot of looking, a lot of digging, and they do have metrics, and you get a pretty good idea how big it is. The second part of the answer to World's Medical Doctor is that I always include a context view with every image I post, so that you can at least get an idea of the size of the landscape, the relative distance from the camera, relative sizes. If you imagine yourself standing where the rover is, it gives you a pretty good idea of distance and size. Now, that's not always true because they do have a telephoto lens on the mast cams, and that can give you a false reading. That's interesting. And Habit Mars says it almost looks like that cup is deliberately put there because it is awfully flat, oriented just so on the ground, isn't it? But that might also be the way it just happened to roll during the cataclysm. It came to rest upright. Or maybe it's on top of something, buried under the sand. So anyway, we were looking at this context view from Percy with all the little doodads marked out. So let's take a look at that first purple item right there in front. And you can see that pretty good. It's been sheared off, that rectangular block. You can see where it's broken, like a broken tombstone almost. In fact, it almost looks like it has writing or carving dead center, doesn't it? And you can see that little rock in front of it to the left isn't part of it. But there's a whole lot more going on. Okay, go up to the right of the data bar, and you'll see right on the edge of the picture a round thing that has a knob on it. What in the heck is that? Anytime I see something round and that has a knob or some kind of marking dead center, well, the chances of erosion pulling that off are pretty darn slim. And so that immediately says artifact to my eyes. And now we're going to go way over to the left of that context view we saw earlier. And look at that. There's a purple arrow pointing right at it. Hey, Earl. Welcome aboard, man. Now, you were late. Be sure to put your quarter in the jar by the door. You're going to have to learn one way or another. But I'm glad you made it. Anyway, look at that. It looks like a horse chestnut, isn't it? It's a completely different color, stone or whatever on the inside, and it almost looks like it has openings around the bottom, doesn't it? Is that a ventilator shaft? A ventilator turbine, maybe? Who knows? I have absolutely no idea. And for those of you who came late, I'm going to go back real quick and share the flowers with you. Yay! Welcome springtime in X3D, crocuses from the front yard. Winter is on its way out the door. Boy, am I glad. I'm not a big fan of winter. Before we go to this next one, Neville Thompson just put up an absolutely splendid, massive giga macro on Percy 023, Sol 23. It's fantastic. I mean, it's just razor sharp. And the rest of these Percy pictures are from that giga macro that Nev put up. And take a look at this. Got your eyeballs ready? Will you look at those on the left edge of the picture? A beautiful half moon. Perfectly semicircular stone. David Rains indicated the blue rock on the far right with the hook seems to be different on the right photo. It is because of parallax. I was trying to get as much of it in there as I could, but that's all the picture had to offer. But we'll take a closer look at it. We're taking a closer look at it right now, as a matter of fact, if we're talking about the right one. Okay, on the left side, that perfectly semicircular rock that's been broken off of something. And it's the same thickness, 90-degree angles. How does that happen in nature? Riddle me that, Batman. And look at that big, beautiful cube right next to it. Yeah, that's just an accident, isn't it? Just an accident of erosion. Pay no attention. There's nothing here. And you go over to the stone on the right. Look at that beautiful curve. Now, granted, that could be just erosion, wind polishing. But look at that arrow straight line on the left. And then on the upper portion of it, there's a perfect circle entering into that stone or whatever it may be. What the heck is that? And then look in the background just behind the closest object on the right. There's something else there. And darn the luck it's hidden. But I'd love a good look at that. That looks like a piece of tech to me. That looks like it's got buttons or knobs on the side. It's got that Batman shape on the end. How do you weather that into a rock and get it perfectly symmetrical? But look in the background at that device between the data bar and my logo. That, I think, is the primo find. And we're going to take a look at it right now. Are you ready? This is very, very cool. Now that, how can anybody say that's natural? It's got that rod coming down the front, right in the middle, 90-degree bend coming out, knob on the end. Who knows? Is it a faucet? I don't know. Marks and structures on top. And then look at those little sails behind it, those little scalloped sails, all curved and apparently hollow from the way the light is playing on them. That to me is really an amazing anomaly. And that speaks to me more than a lot of other anomalies. Okay, and now we're going to look at something that was way in the background. It took me a lot of work to extract this next one, but you'll see what I mean in just a minute. What happened to all the comments? Are we frozen up? Well, no, it says I got an excellent connection. It'll be interesting one day when I have 200-300 viewers on a live hang like Chris Maroney does. By the way, we have, I don't think it's too soon or too dangerous to let this out of the bag, but Jimmy, the real Jimmy Roberts one, my good buddy, is his marsfam.net. MarsFam.net is really coming along, and we're about to add some new pages and some new features to it that I think is going to be real interesting to you. We also want to kind of back up the work that we're doing on YouTube and Facebook, because there's no telling when they're going to cancel our channels or delete us. And we want to have a fallback position where you can continue to visit us. And, hey, there's Boysenberry Dracula. Thank you. Keep up the great work. Well, reason I do it is because of you guys. I love doing this stuff for you guys who actually appreciate it. That means an awful lot to me. So, get ready for this one. I saw this way in the background on that same Percy Giga Macro that Nev put up. Here it comes. Got your X3D ready? Take a look at that. That, to me, looks like a pyramid with some very deep carving on the side facing us. And just off the top of the pyramid, of course there's a lot else in the picture that is pretty anomalous, but it's too blurry to really assign meaning. But look at that thing off the top of the pyramid to the right a little bit in the background at the 1 o'clock position. That, I wish I had a clearer picture of that. But remember when we were talking about the right angle triangle, the Pythagorean triangle on Phil's cube? Okay, let's go back to that for a second. Okay, here's Phil's cube, and look at the upper left corner. There's a right angle triangle, and we find that repeatedly as a glyph, as carved into the stone, all over Mars. Okay, now keep that in mind, and let's go back to that object behind the pyramid to the right. Do you see it? Do you see that right angle triangle on the left side of that thing? Exactly the same thing. I'm thinking that was, and I'm talking about the one in back on the right. I'm not talking about the pyramid. The pyramid itself is bizarre. And it almost looks like it's on a platform and that it's hollowed out underneath. What in the heck was that? Tony's in the house. Good to see you. I'm so glad you stopped by. Yeah, I am feeling better, and I never felt really bad. I just look nasty. But the treatment is taking hold and starting to I'm looking less like a reptilian with leprosy. And I'm sure glad of that. So anyway, and just a reminder, Tony, put your quarter in the jar by the door. You were late. I want to be able to cash that thing out and buy everyone Twizzlers before Easter. But hey, if not, then we'll spend it all on Cadbury cream eggs or something like that. And Tony gets to be hall monitor and pass them out. I'll probably already be passed out, so not to worry. So we're going to take another shuffle. We've got about 5 minutes left to go, so we're going to take another shuffle through the images tonight that we've shared so far. And, Darren, I'm not sure how big that pyramid is. Not terribly big. Maybe 5 feet tall. Way in the background. And when you see the context view, it should be marked in there. At least I hope I remembered to do that. And it's hard keeping track of all these things. I have a work folder for each image I work on for hours. It takes hours to do this, each image. And there'll be anywhere from a dozen to 30 or 40 different iterations of the image in that work folder as I work to get the 3D just right and get the colors just right and the shadows just right without falsifying anything. It's very important to me that I adhere to the pixel integrity. But anyway, for those who are in late, here are the crocuses from the garden. It's springtime here in the Boston area. And kamikaze, I'll take the Cadbury cream eggs. Well, buddy, if I get to them first, you're not going to see nary a one. I'll do my best to hold off. Hi, Pat. Thank you. Thank you. I'm glad you're liking what's going on here, and I'm particularly glad that you're choosing to show up tonight. Anyway, crocuses, first sign of spring. And then we moved on to Phil Cox and the blue cube he sent my way the other day. That's an old one from 416 Curiosity. And that does look metallic, doesn't it? Kamikaze says, like my dad, I'm like his dad, gonna roll around the porch. He says, I'll wrestle you. I don't mind taking you on. I have belts in 5 different martial arts. I enjoy a little practice now and then, as long as nobody gets mad or goes to the hospital. So that's Phil's blue cube. And then I came across this carving, or what I'm calling a carving, with a question mark after, because honestly, I don't know if that's erosion or if it's purposeful carving. I can't tell. It's so close. Yeah, and that's a good point, Kamikaze. Geological features that have blue and green in them often have copper, a significant copper component. So is that carving? I don't know. And then we ran across this ChemCam image from Nev showing a pipe coming out of the cliff. And as indistinct as this is, most of the ChemCam images are pretty blurry. But you can see the alluvial erosion below the pipe in the rock. Like liquid had flowed out of it for a long time and wore away that rock. Yeah, boysenberry. Yeah, 5 different martial arts. I spent a lot of years studying that stuff. I'm a harmless fuzzball nowadays. I don't need to study it anymore because I don't like being sore. And I'm built for comfort, not speed nowadays. And I suppose if I was backed in a corner and my life depended on it, I could still be relatively effective. But I studiously avoid situations where that might be a possibility. And thank you, AC Stinnett, Country Music. Thank you for your nice comments. And we will find the truth one day, won't we? And water doesn't go into squares. Very good point. That is a very good point about the carving, so-called carving. Water, and I'll flash that image real quick. Water doesn't go into squares. Just how does water form a right angle? And yeah, you're absolutely right, boysenberry. They do smudge images because they don't want us to see. They copy and paste, and if you've seen Chris's channel at all, he's an expert at pointing out their skullduggery, as it were. You don't lose your speed. Well, I don't know. I kind of move like a dinosaur nowadays, but thank you, Renee. Nothing is what it seems. Yeah, nothing is at all what it seems. This picture caused a lot of comment tonight. I call it Hidden Layer. It's something that a fellow named Van Cliff found. And it's interesting that Kamikaze talks about that serpent race, the Naga. Of course, in India, they're very ancient scriptures, and I studied there for some time. The Naga, it was their snake god. It was an underground snake. It had a jewel on its forehead that it used as a light. It could see with that jewel. And of course, that might also be symbolic of the third eye. And there's a lot of discussion that the moon may be a satellite, and I certainly don't discount that. We know that when the Apollo, I think, was it the first one? Apollo 11, when they left the moon, they let the ascent stage crash into the moon and rang like a bell for like 3 hours. And so that tells them the moon is hollow. That's a cool cave, isn't it? Square door. Lots of shapes on top. And then we have this object that Alexander Leah shared with me, right next to the Curiosity rover. And boy, that looks like a technical piece, doesn't it? We're going to zip through these because it's time for me to fold up and become a pumpkin. Then we have this cup that Laszlo sent me there underneath a detail view. And then that arrow's pointing at what looks like a shark's head. You'll see it better in the video. It's a lot larger. 2 black eyes, symmetrical head. How does that happen? There's a Nephilim cup. This thing is big. It's about 4 feet tall. A person could get inside of that really easy. But what gets me is that handle. How did that survive? How did that handle survive? Oh, and there's Rusty Never Sleeps. Hey, man, how you doing there? 10-4, good buddy. Hope you're staying safe out there. Martin, I don't know about the soil samples from the moon. I don't know that it proved that it came from somewhere else, and if it did, I'm sure they wouldn't share it with us. And yeah, boysenberry, a lot of people have seen reptilian eyes on people. Pretty freaky, isn't it? Here's Percy and that neat little round thing. But this is a picture I like. Isn't that cool? That beautiful round thing on the left, that perfect cube. Then the rounded off thing on the right with a hole in the top. The thing behind that looks like a piece of mechanical debris. And then way in the background, that bizarre whatever it is. Here's a close-up of it. Is that cool? I really like that. And it's got those little shells in back of those little empty shells. And our last image of the evening, revisiting again, the pyramid way in the background on the Percy shot. How does erosion make 90-degree angles like that? How do they do it? I don't know. What about those deep carvings on the face? Why does it have equal-sized sides? Triangles. How does that happen? I don't know. And I don't think anybody else has a good explanation either. And boysenberry, I think you're right. Elon Musk says that we could colonize everywhere in 1,000,000 years. And who's to say that hasn't happened many times already? I mean, come on. I believe that life is the prime directive. The universe is virtually infinite, even though it's not. And of course, we're like a bubble in a vast sea of bubbles. The universe just goes on and on. Hey, Juan Carlos, you're welcome, sir. And it looks like it's that time. It surely does. So, I'm going to go ahead and sign off and go turn into a pumpkin. I want to thank each of you for stopping by tonight. We've got our episode number 88 coming up Friday midnight. And it'll have the pictures that you saw tonight in it, but it'll also have analysis, and it'll be a little more palatable than the raw stuff that we did tonight. So this is your buddy Dave over at MarsX3D. Be well.